The squirrel that lost his nuts. Nelson was the most forgetful squirrel in all of Acorn Valley. While his friends and family members spent the crisp autumn days carefully burying their winter nuts in organized rows, Nelson buried his nuts and then immediately forgot where he put them. "Now where did I put that acorn?" Nelson muttered to himself for the 100th time that morning, scratching his fuzzy head with his tiny paw. He had just buried a perfectly good acorn not 5 minutes ago, but for the life of him, he couldn't remember if it was under the big rock, next to the brown mushroom, or somewhere near Mrs. Rabbit's vegetable garden. Nelson's sister Hazel scampered up the oak tree, her cheeks bulging with nuts. "Nelson, you're supposed to be preparing for winter, not standing there talking to yourself." "I am preparing," Nelson protested. "I've buried 17 nuts today." "Well, where are they?" Hazel asked, tapping her foot impatiently. Nelson's tail drooped. That's a very good question." This had been going on for weeks. Every day, Nelson would enthusiastically collect nuts, bury them with great care, and then promptly forget their location. He had started making little maps on birch bark, but then he forgot where he put the maps. He tried tying a blade of grass around his paw to remind himself, but then he forgot what the grass was supposed to mean. The other squirrels in the neighborhood were starting to worry. "Poor Nelson," whispered Mrs. Fluffytail to her husband. "What's he going to eat when the snow comes?" "I heard he buried 3 walnuts in the same spot yesterday," added Chip, shaking his head sadly. 3 walnuts. Right on top of each other. What a waste. What none of the other squirrels knew was that Nelson's forgetfulness was about to become the most wonderful thing that had ever happened to Acorn Valley. It all started on the morning of the first frost in November. Nelson woke shivering in his nest, his breath making little puffs in the chilly air. "Blah," he chattered. "I really need to find some of those nuts I buried. But where in the world did I put them?" He scampered down from his tree and began digging randomly around the forest floor. First, he tried near the old log where he was sure he had buried a hazelnut. No luck. Then, he dug by the stream where he thought he remembered hiding some acorns. Nothing there either. But as Nelson was digging his 3rd hole, something wonderful happened. He didn't find his nuts, but he found 6 beautiful acorns that smelled absolutely delicious. "Well, I don't remember burying these," Nelson said happily, "but finders keepers." As he munched on his unexpected breakfast, he heard a small voice crying nearby. "Oh no! Oh no! Where did I put my winter supply?" It was Nip, the smallest squirrel in the valley, sobbing by a fallen tree. "I'm sure I buried them right here, but they're gone." Nelson's heart went out to little Nip. "Don't cry. I just found some extra nuts over there. You can have them." Nip's eyes lit up with joy and gratitude. "Really? Oh, thank you, Nelson." This gave Nelson an idea. If he had accidentally found nuts that weren't his, maybe other squirrels were having the same issue. He spent the rest of the day wandering around the valley, digging in random spots. And something magical kept happening. Everywhere he dug, he found nuts. Sometimes they were his nuts, sometimes they belonged to other squirrels, but there were nuts everywhere. By afternoon, Nelson had discovered something amazing. Because he had been so forgetful and had buried nuts in so many random places, he had accidentally created the largest, most scattered treasure hunt in squirrel history. Hazel, Chip, Mrs. Fluffytail. Everyone, come here. Nelson called out excitedly. All the squirrels in the valley gathered around. I have an announcement, Nelson declared proudly. I may not remember where I put my nuts, but I've accidentally buried them everywhere. There are nuts all over the valley. We just have to look for them. And so began the Great Acorn Valley treasure hunt. The squirrels formed teams and spent the day digging and searching all over the forest. Every few minutes, someone would shout, "Found one," and do a little victory dance. Nip found a cache of walnuts under the bridge. Chip discovered a pile of chestnuts behind the waterfall. Mrs. Fluffytail unearthed a treasure trove of acorns near the meadow. And Nelson? Well, Nelson found nuts in places he didn't even remember visiting. By the end of the day, they had found enough nuts to feed the entire squirrel community through the winter, twice. Nelson, said Hazel, giving her brother a big hug, you're a genius. You've created the first ever community winter storage system. I have? Nelson asked, looking confused but pleased. Think about it, explained Chip excitedly. Instead of each family having to remember where their own nuts are buried, now we all just know that nuts are buried all over the valley. It's like having hundreds of pantries instead of just one. From that day forward, the squirrels of Acorn Valley adopted Nelson's system. Every autumn, instead of carefully organizing their individual nut storage, all would bury nuts randomly throughout the forest. Then, whenever anyone got hungry during the winter, they would just go on a little treasure hunt. The system worked so well that squirrels from neighboring valleys started visiting to learn about it. Nelson became famous throughout the forest as the squirrel that revolutionized winter storage. But the best part wasn't the fame or the praise. The best part was that no squirrel in Acorn Valley ever went hungry again. Nelson's forgetfulness had accidentally created a system where everyone shared, everyone helped each other, and everyone always had enough. You know what? Nelson said to Hazel as they watched the first snow begin to fall. I'm glad I'm forgetful. If I remembered where I put everything, we never would have discovered how much fun it is to search for surprises together. And every winter after that, when the young squirrels would complain about not remembering where they buried their nuts, the older squirrels would just smile and say, "Don't worry. Sometimes the best discoveries happen when you forget where you put things." The end.